everybody. I'm welcoming Mayor Eric Garcetti.
Thank you. Please sit down. Thank you. That's very, very, very kind of you. As I always say, make sure somebody who works for you introduces you, and you'll always get a great introduction. But thank you, Flora. Seriously, thank you. I also want to thank Gloria. Thank you, Barbara, for your work. Thank you, Gloria, for your work in making this happen. Thank you to Marion, too, for the work actually keeping this, which is the best event in Los Angeles. It really is. I look forward to this every single year, not only because you demand that I kind of summarize what I've been doing and thinking about for the last year, but just because we get to see each other. I know you're not here for me, you're here for each other. This is a moment to see friends, especially now after 2-3 years of not being together, to feel each other in 3 dimensions, to hug some old friends, to maybe cut some new deals, to build new alliances. And Armida and the entire board, thank you too for your extraordinary leadership and the 16 incredible chambers that really comprise the biggest economic force of any business organization inside the city of Los Angeles. I also want to thank the Bachman family. Thank you for always being there, and Galpin for being one of the lead sponsors. Jeff, thank you as well. The Scobin family can throw in there too. To Councilmember Blumenfield, you can tell when you're at the end of your term because only one council member shows up, but it's a good thing it's among my very favorite because they're less scared about your vetoes or anything like that. But I have loved serving with Bob. I can't wait to continue supporting his great work. He stepped up on some of the toughest issues from homelessness and transportation, a great advocate for the Valley, and re-elected. So give him a round of applause that he has 4 more years of Blumenfield in the Valley. To Mayor Maurer and to Councilmember Shapiro, former Councilmember Gaines, thank you for being here. We know that the Valley is not just the city of Los Angeles, but it's many cities here. Lindsay Horvath, who's here as well from West Hollywood. Thank you to all of our elected officials, current and past. Dennis Zine, because if you're willing to step up and actually serve in this day and age, God bless you, let alone run for something new. It shows your courage. And please, support folks. Vote, by the way. We had terrible turnout. We were going to move to an even year so we'd have more turnout, and nobody showed up. It really matters in this mayoral election. There's another debate, I think, tomorrow night, if I'm not mistaken, KNX. Listen, I was asked by KNX, do you remember the debates? I'm like, yeah, of course I remember them. They're actually a chance for you not just to listen to positions, but to feel the people. Because you're almost electing a parent for a city, right? Who do you want to be, mommy or daddy? And what sort of values do they bring? And I'll get back to that a little bit now. So I look at this, it's my last speech. They said 15 minutes, but it's my last one, so I'll be under 45, I promise. But you had a job interview for me. It was called an election 10 years ago. And about 5.5 years ago, I had a second one. And thanks to the voters of Los Angeles, 81% said, of those who turned out, said, very smart group of people, even if it wasn't a lot, said, please continue serving. And so in many ways, this is kind of my exit interview. Chance to say, okay, what did you learn? What can we do better as a city? And I want to kind of give you all some advice, because a lot of times, as I've been mayor, working on something that'll long last past me, people say, well, you won't even be around as mayor. And I always remind people, yeah, I'll be around with a more dangerous title, constituent, and Angelino. And just because we don't have the title, as I always tell our police officers when they graduate, you're not a police officer. That's your job, but you are your name. And my father taught me, Eric, know who you are going into this job because it's going to be who you are going out of this job. And as a side note, I want to thank our first responders that are here. I want to thank you, Chief Moore, for taking time to be here, and the command staff. To our fire department, thank you so much as well for, by the way, LAPD is back. And I hope I established that LAFD a few years ago is back too. We need you to recruit police officers, and there's bonuses for them. We're working on housing for our police officers. Hear this loud and clear and unequivocally. We love our police officers in Los Angeles. We will always need a police department here in Los Angeles. And while we don't sugarcoat our challenges, whether they're challenges I face as a mayor or the chief faces within a department, that's something that is continuous improvement. We will support our first responders, even as we co-share what public safety means, so that we don't just put on a firefighter or police officer's shoulders a mental health crisis as we build response vans that can now bring clinicians instead of folks with badges out to somebody who's experiencing schizophrenia and actually give them a solution instead of a momentary Band-Aid. So we have to co-own this together, but we also have to support each other and humanize each other. Nobody should dehumanize somebody because of their title or their badge, and vice versa. We can't dehumanize communities just because of the color of their skin or their income levels. It's a shared project for us all. So I had this long speech that was here. I was reading it while I was in Van Nuys City Hall. Yes, I work out of the Valley as frequently as I can. But I'm going to kind of discard most of that and just kind of speak from the heart, because I think it's really important for us. I actually started the day in the Valley in Van Nuys. The most important piece of information I can give you is that we're offering Flume water meters for $24 per household. They're $200 things, but they can tell you in real time on your smartphone whether you're showering too long, whether there's a leak. They can reduce your water bills by like at least 10%. And basically, we'll give you $175 on us for you to just bring this in. We want like at least 150,000 households to sign up. So please go to flumewater.com/LADWP and get yours today. Okay, thanks so much. Take it now. So I started in the Valley because we have so much work that happens here in the Valley. And I just want to say, as I've said here in past years, the narrative of the Valley had been for 2 or 3 decades, you never think about us. We're always an afterthought. City Hall doesn't care about this, the equivalent of the 6th largest city in America, because we're like this appendage to the rest of the city. And my promise when I ran for mayor is this Valley boy would never forget about the Valley. It wouldn't just be integrated as a frequent thought. I would work out of the Valley. I would come here and announce things in the Valley. I would listen to the Valley. And the United Chamber has been such a key part of, I think, that work that we did. And I've never sugarcoated our problems here. I've come here at this meeting each year, this luncheon, and said, we've got tough work. There's a homelessness and housing crisis. I think I've said 2 or 3 years. Our number 1, 2, and 3 issues in Los Angeles and California are housing, housing, and housing, and needing to build more. You don't have to be homeless to feel it, but that story of the dad I met at daddy-daughter camp in Griffith Park, who grew up here in the Valley, and his parents bought their home grandparents for $5,000, the parents for $50,000, him for $500,000. But he said, if my daughter only has $5 million homes, our story ends. So the importance of us doing that, the way that we have always faced, even as political leaders, hate things that are complicated, difficult, and long to solve. They usually run away from them because they have to get reelected or they want credit for things. I try to run to them, like a metaphorical firefighter. I run to that fire. I said, I'll take responsibility for homelessness. People are like, finally, we have somebody to blame. I said, blame and responsibility are 2 different things. We all need to take blame for homelessness, but responsibility. Or in a pandemic, when I could have said that's the county's responsibility because we don't even have a public health department, I said, I'll take responsibility and step up and build the largest testing sites with the LAFD in this world, vaccination centers. We will step up and take tough decisions like shutting the city down, testing people without symptoms, do that tough work. You were as sick of my voice as I was, 100 nightly addresses, an hour in English and then an hour in Spanish to let people know they weren't alone and that they could do something. But the main message I want to give you here today is not one of just the pessimism and the challenges we face, but one of unabashed optimism. Because I think we've lost it for this moment in Los Angeles. We were talking about this with the police department yesterday. It doesn't take much to flip it back to what defined LA life for me and being an Angelino always. We are defined by good weather, by great people, and by our optimism. But somehow that third one has been lost. Kind of as a country right now, because politically all we do is find the enemy within, how we can separate each other when we used to love each other despite differences and find what we had in common first. Both political parties exploit this all the time, unfortunately. Although I always joke there's 3 political parties, Democrats, Republicans, and mayors in America. And we're forced to, I don't ask somebody what's your party affiliation when you call me and ask me to make the streets smoother or to improve the permitting process for businesses. We have a responsibility to one another. And I think that if we imagine for a moment, if a year or 2 from now, we see homelessness not just flatten at a very high level, but we bend that curve down 10 or 15% a year for 5, 6 years. If we hire the 750 sanitation workers, and anybody who wants to be a sanitation worker, we've got openings, and we clean the city up from the pandemic mess that was kind of left out there. If we brought crime back down because we got the number of police officers we need and people had the shared mission of public safety, instead of going up 10%, we went back down 10%, as we just did 5 or 6 years ago when we had a similar spike and we focused on it. And if we somehow looked at California and were able to build enough housing here so that people could afford to stay, we would be such optimists tomorrow. It's not that we need 100% change. We need 10, 15, 20% changes. And the patience and, more importantly, the concentration and the determination, the steeliness to see it through, to turn this into a great city again. When you asked me to answer the call of homelessness, and something I've been working on since I was a teenager volunteering on Skid Row, where we're at, thanks to council members like Bob Blumenfield and others, is unimaginable. I know it doesn't feel it when we see encampments, but there are places where finally we see encampments beginning to thin out, where I know the tens of thousands of people that we've brought home, it matters for each one of them. I was at a permanent supportive housing opening and I met a man who's 77 years old in South LA who had been homeless for 20 years. Imagine being homeless at 77 years old. He's a photographer. He struggled with bipolarity. I'm following him on Instagram and enjoying his photographs. He hasn't been home in 2 decades, but homelessness is over for him today, thanks to voters who allowed us to pass Measure HHH, which is coming in with 1,000 more units 2 years earlier for 15,000 less per unit, no matter what you hear. When we look at the 5 or 6 shelters we're going to build, now there's 28 Bridge Home shelters in 14 of our council districts. When we've leveraged tens of thousands of returns home, when we've tripled the amount of housing in this city, 8,000 units a year when I started, about 25,000 a year now, I would say to my successor, I tripled it. All you have to do is double that again. And we'll actually have, if we build for a decade, 50,000 units of housing. With wonderful developments like we're going to see here in the West Valley, don't think about density or no density. We're long past that. Think about beautiful, well-planned housing versus crappy housing. And fight crappy housing and ugly housing, but don't fight density, because we need it if our children and our grandchildren are going to live here, if companies are going to expand here and stay here. After this speech, I'll go to Sylmar and Reseda to look at 2 different HHH projects. And this old theme that I want to return to, that the Valley is the afterthought, I hope you've seen the last 9.5 years and will demand of my successor that the Valley be a first and foremost thought. I'll give you some examples: transportation, sports, economic development. So first, let's look at what we've done. I think we've accomplished a tremendous amount. 2, look at what's coming, and I think you'll get very excited. 3, stay focused on key industries and key skills for the economic prosperity of the San Fernando Valley in our city. And 4, let's get some optimism. Let's get it back and let's lead ourselves. I had a meeting with a different business group recently, and they said, LA is a tough place to do business. I said, you're literally the Chamber of Commerce. If the Chamber of Commerce isn't promoting our city, who will? Work with me. We've been working on stuff. It's 6 months quicker to get a permit. It's electronic permitting. I've reduced our city's business tax by 25% when that was a complaint of so many folks. We've saved tens of thousands of businesses. When I look at the stats from the beginning of our time together, the beginning of the pandemic, it's on one of these papers, I think it's on the other side of this, 3,000 COVID relief checks, 5,000 comeback checks, 700 micro enterprise checks, 500 rental relief checks, 740 microloans, 125 childcare facility and enterprise checks. We showed that we step up to help one another. So let's start selling LA again, because if we're not selling LA, it's going to be like what happened with Pittsburgh or Detroit when people did start to leave. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But when we pump it up, think of the things we've been through in this city. Just in our past history, for many of our lifetimes, we've been through riots and recessions and earthquakes and gas crises before. I remember at Woodley Avenue in Ventura in the 1970s when cars were lined up. I remember even cars one day and odd cars the next day in a much worse gas crisis. Droughts, downturns, and we've always roared back. So what makes you think we can't roar back now? So let's get to the specifics. Transportation. Here in the Valley, last time a measure was passed, there was nothing for the Valley. So I spent a lot of time here in the Valley and around LA County with my 87 fellow mayors, convening them every quarter to make sure that we knew that we weren't just going to do things downtown or just for the city of LA. And now we have 6 major projects for the Valley thanks to Measure M. The biggest part of a LA River bike path, doubling the speed of the G line, the artist formerly known as the Orange Line, which I hope we'll call it again because it's much easier to remember. Our Van Nuys light rail that'll come East Valley, they call it, but down Van Nuys Boulevard, connecting the San Fernando Valley with the San Gabriel Valley with a rapid bus line. Our Sepulveda Pass, which is darn important, not just to us, but the West Side and one day to LAX. and the improvements we will do, and I love my CSUN friends that are here around CSUN, of transit improvements to make that work as well. This is, don't tell the rest of the regions of LA County, but perhaps the greatest concentration of projects just in the next 2 decades, right here in the Valley. Sports, remember 1984? Remember the great events that we had here in the Valley? No, you don't, because we didn't have any in the Valley. So when we won the 2028 Olympics and Paralympics, I said, we're going to do it in the Valley. And I predict we will have 5 or 6 events and help have a new master plan for the Sepulveda Basin and leave as a legacy. Stuart Waldman is our Valley guy on the board of LA 28. I made sure he was on the board, that we will leave behind the greatest urban sports park in America as the legacy of that. Imagine, we haven't settled everything that's going to be there. Imagine having an equestrian center there. Imagine having skateboarding and BMX where it really was born, right here in the Valley. Maybe archery, maybe even surfing in the San Fernando Valley. I'm just going to throw that out there at you, and you can try to figure out how we might even get that done. So the Valley isn't an afterthought. It is a forethought now as well. When you think about the industries that sustain what we're doing, keep focused on the key industries. I have loved coming out to the Valley quietly and visiting those companies. Let me start with the big ones. The companies like Follow Your Heart, which long before people were eating vegan food was creating Vegan-A's. If you never had it, it's actually quite delicious. Right here, manufactured here, a great green industry. Panavision, which literally is the eyes to every story we see. Wet, which whether it's at the Port of Los Angeles or in Las Vegas and the Middle East, is creating the greatest fountains and entertainment experience anywhere in the world. Bobrick, which is manufacturing green water-saving equipment for our bathrooms, where we then had Vice President Joe Biden come to talk about raising the minimum wage. And by the way, as we raised the minimum wage and cut city business taxes, guess what happened? We are leading the country in job growth, leading the country in the valuation of our publicly traded companies. So both good on the jobs, labor side, and the business side. And we've cut poverty by 27% in the city of Los Angeles. We've boosted Black and brown incomes by 44 and 43% respectively, when the nation only did it by 25% in that time. These things have mattered. Tigum, which manufactures the great trolleys that you see not just at the Grove, but also in places in the Middle East and the Caribbean. Rocketdyne, which I'll get to in a second, which is making rockets right here, core of the Valley. MGA Entertainment and its new headquarters. NBC Universal Comcast, which is investing in Super Mario Land, or Nintendo Land, I think, Nintendo World, excuse me. Spectralab, which is building solar panels that put our satellites into space. But it's also those small businesses like the Churro Hub Cafe in Pacoima, Caruso's Italian Kitchen, a few places here in the Valley. That wasn't a mayoral endorsement. That's just an Italian restaurant, just to be clear. Cardinal Painting, J&C Toys, Swiss Cleaners, that Icon CDC, our North Valley Business Source Center, is helping get what they need to go from small to medium to big. We have so much here in the Valley that most cities would be envious of having. So let's stay focused on those industries. When I became your mayor, I said I'm going to focus on the entertainment industry. And we did. Quadrupling the state film tax credit, which has now been doubled again because of that. I spent all the political capital I had asking Governor Brown to please sign that. And when he did, we've seen record production here. In Sun Valley, we see Hudson Pacific building new studios. I don't know if you saw the article today about how we need more and more sound stages in LA. When's the last time we had that story? It was always the flight of production. We focused on aerospace by bringing together Ventura and Orange and LA counties to be able to have a joint application for a federal program on advanced manufacturing. And we brought $6 billion. And when you go to a Rocketdyne and you see those engines right here in the Valley where it's been producing that for decades, we are actually producing those engines that may put a man or woman on Mars. That's here in this Valley. So we all should be optimistic about what is coming forward. We should be focused on what City Hall needs to do. It's part of the reason that I've tried to make it easier to do business at City Hall. Whether it was Executive Directive 35 to create a pathway for small businesses, when we looked at procurement, that fancy word that means your taxpayer dollars that we spend on goods and services. If you haven't signed up for, please, every single chamber, and I know many of you have done this, push out RAMP, our new regional program to get yourself accredited for city contracting. In the past, you had to look through every contract to see if it fits your business. Now you can put your type of business and it will alert you when we have those contracts. We have others like the community colleges and the school district, soon the Olympics and others, who will put their contracts through this so that we can spend our local dollars locally. And the $4.5 billion we spend every single year in the city of LA will be used here in the city of LA. We came together to make sure, it's at rampla.org. That's your second, after you go to the flumewater.com/LADWP, go to rampla.org. And we have guarantees for set-asides, and thanks to the city council and the voters, with Measure BB, we now have preferences for local businesses that we can put in due to a charter change. But all the key industries in the world mean nothing if we don't focus on the people and the skills. I have loved coming to Mission, Valley, Pierce Colleges, and CSUN to see the incredible higher education infrastructure here in the Valley. At Valley College, focusing on those aerospace jobs of the future. Mission College, advanced manufacturing. At Pierce College, looking at some of the green jobs and building trades. And at CSUN, where folks like Lacey, our clean tech incubator, is looking at ways that we're changing vehicles to make them zero emissions and bringing that here to the Valley where we used to manufacture those vehicles and will once again. We need to give people the skills they need. And one of the things I'm proudest of having done is to push community college, which isn't my direct responsibility, to be free in the city, which inspired the state to do the same. And in the first 2 years, get this number, 40% more LAUSD kids went to college full-time simply because we made community college free. That's something to celebrate. And we added to that it's free for them to ride that bus, like I did when it was the RTD every afternoon on Ventura Boulevard. It's now free to ride Metro from K to 14. And hopefully soon it'll be free for everybody to ride Metro, which is the goal that we have long term. We've given them opportunities to study abroad through the Maya program, not named after my daughter, but the mayor's youth ambassador program, taking folks who have never left the Valley, let alone the state or country, to places like Mexico and Egypt and Armenia and Japan, where they will change their horizons forever and bring back ideas and help those countries here in our city. We want to continue focusing on the people. But let me close by getting back to where I kind of wanted to start things, which is who we are and that kind of unquantifiable thing that we can all do when we root for our valley, our city, our state, our country. I'd be wary, and I'm not editorializing again on this mayoral election, but I'd be wary whether it's at the national level or local level when people say, I will do something for our city. It's unfortunately the reflection of our time. When it comes to commerce, we undercut so many of our small businesses when we have this kind of one-click culture of like, well, I can just click on something and it'll be there this afternoon. Why can't you do that with political problems? Why can't you just solve them overnight? Homelessness, I want to be gone tomorrow, please. When people say, I am the one who can clean up a country, or I am the one who will deliver the future, it's never been I. It has always been we. And we created a consumerist approach to our public life. Our democracy is now, well, I vote, or maybe I forgot to, but most of the time I vote. Now go fix those things. Or you're the police, make the city, come on, Chief Moore, make this city safer now. You're a Valley resident, why can't you do that? When in the past, it depended on our police activity leagues and our neighborhood watches and our understanding of the causes of crime and reforms to making sure that we don't repeat offenders, employment programs that take folks who are coming out of prison, like we established with the new Mayor's Office of Reentry 9.5 years ago, that put them as Caltrans employees now with benefits and healthcare. And instead of a 75% recidivism rate that some police officer has to pick up, some victim has to be the victim of crime, and we have to pay for while they're incarcerated. We have a 2% recidivism rate for the folks who have been doing that for the last 6 years. This is a collective city. And our strength politically, our strength in terms of community, and our democracy will come from not when we vote, but what we do between elections. Ernst Renan, who's a French philosopher, once said, the nation is a daily plebiscite, meaning you have to vote every single day. Not literally, but you have to do something every single day. And I'm preaching to the converted because every single one of you is a public official. Whether you work for the city or at a university or community group, or you just are part of a chamber of commerce, you give more of yourself than your average citizen. But we have to be the voices of getting everybody to do that. Because I've always said, I have about 400 employees in the mayor's office, 40,000 employees who work for the city of LA, but we have 4 million people in the city of LA and 19 million in this metro area, which makes us a top 10 city of the world population-wise, and guess what? We're the third biggest economy of any city in the world now, basically tied with New York, and watch out, New York. We're coming for you both in the World Series and in the size of our city, and only Tokyo is bigger. Congratulations, by the way, the Dodgers. We broke the record last night of most wins in our history. So this is not an I job. This is a we job. And the things that we have gone through in the past 9.5 years, it has been my blessing to be able to help us get through with each one of you. I get like 3 questions from every reporter these days. What is your legacy? What are you proudest of? What do you wish you had done better? And what's your advice for your successors? Well, let me just boil that down. I don't care about my legacy, and I've told my staff, ever try to name something after me, I will veto it, and after I'm dead, I'll come back from the grave and destroy it. I didn't do this to put my name someplace. I don't care what people who are the kind of talking heads decide what my legacy is, because it's our collective legacy of this decade. I've just been your mayor, working hard. But all I want people to know is that I loved this city with every fiber in my being. And that I worked really, really hard to try to build that city of the future, to breathe optimism back into this place, to work alongside great people like Bob, with great sacrifices, by the way, to our families and to our friends. I can't wait to just be a normal person again, to reintroduce Eric Garcetti to Eric Garcetti. Say, hey, what's up, dude? And kind of be that Valley boy back here. But I would say, to paraphrase Ronald Reagan, something I don't do that often, there's nothing that's wrong with Los Angeles that can't be fixed with what's right with Los Angeles. And all you have to do is see LA. I'm giving a speech that former Mayor Villaraigosa asked if I would do next week. And the question is Los Angeles still a global city? And I just cracked up. I'm like, can you even ask that question today? We're not just a global city, not just a great global city. We are an indispensable global city. Talk to somebody. I just came back from Indonesia working on your behalf as part of an urban forum I helped found for G20 countries, because so much of what we do, from the environment to our economy to migration flows, we have to figure out how we do together. And everybody there in Jakarta, our sister city, second biggest city in the world, was like, you're from LA? I've been to LA and I love it. I want to go to LA. I've never been there. I know about LA and it's incredible. You're having the Olympics coming. The World Cup's going to be there. You guys have Hollywood. I've always wanted to walk the Walk of Fame. We don't sugarcoat our challenges, nor should we. We should demand our leaders face them soberly as we demand that of ourselves. But we've got the universities, we've got the people, we've got the infrastructure, and we've got the brilliance. It's just time for us to get that spring back in our step and that optimism in our words and our deeds. I think I told you last year one of the favorite poems that I found during the pandemic was written about the poet Andrea del Sarto, in the 19th century Italian artist, by Robert Browning. He wrote a poem. And one of the lines in it, which summarized everything I kind of felt about our fight against homelessness, was that a man's reach should always exceed his grasp. A man's reach should always exceed his grasp. Goes for women as well, of course. And the idea is that those great moments in our collective history as human beings have been when we've reached for something that maybe we can't touch. The African American who reaches for his freedom, never to experience it, but so that generations later, their descendants will be free. The women who said women should actually be able to vote when that was radical, but never got to vote. They never got to hold that, but their granddaughters and great-granddaughters are today. The farm worker who said we shouldn't die from pesticides, the couple that was in love but never got to legally marry, but fought for marriage equality so that today anybody can marry whom they love. We have to reach for those things we cannot grasp. And if we're lucky, we might actually be able to hold them. If we keep stretching and keep dreaming and keep pushing towards that, there is nothing the San Fernando Valley can't lead Los Angeles to do. So I can't wait to come back here as the new Dennis Zine and sit here as a former elected official. Actually, I'd like to withdraw that metaphor for all sorts of reasons. I love you, Dennis, but and to see the great work that we will collectively still be doing. And you can count on me to be alongside doing that work. Is that you, Evelyn? Is that Evelyn out there? No, sorry. I thought it was I recognize somebody. Yesterday in the afternoon, I took a flight on a Department of Water and Power helicopter. I brought an LA Times reporter to look at the conditions of the drought, to inspect our infrastructure from our reservoirs to the LA River. And I flew right over here. We took a route that took us from downtown, through the East Valley, out towards Castaic, back out around here, went over to Pacific Palisades and back over the mountains through the valley and then back to City Hall. And from the air, the city is incredible. It compresses down and you realize it is one organism. From the ground, you feel how big it is. And I truly will close on this. I wrote something on the plane ride back from Indonesia. But I said, it was very private, but I'll share it with you today. I said, when you come in as mayor, probably as council member too, you think you're a superhero. You're wearing that cape of cockiness. You can do anything. And you've listened to all the things and the dreams that people have and the tens of thousands of supporters that you have. And then you meet the thousands of city workers who wear badges and don't wear badges, who will be there. And you think you have this army and anything is possible. And I always found that some of the biggest things were much easier than I ever dreamed of. Changing the airport, so LAX, so that the 7 most feared words in Los Angeles, can you pick me up at LAX, will be a thing of the past. We're actually going to get, and it's going to open next year. It's a gift to the next mayor. Go ahead, you get the ribbon cutting, of having public transportation there. Recycling 100% of our water long after toilet to tap is put to death, and we call it showers to flowers, and we'll have 40% more water. Those big things are easier than you ever imagine. But the small ones are sometimes tougher than you ever know. That one tent down the street, that intersection where no matter how many improvements we do, there's still accidents because people are on their phones or driving too fast. And the city humbles you. It reminds you of just how small you are by the end, this exit interview. But I think that mirrors what our humanity is about. Human existence has always been about having that arrogance to push forward into new places that we never thought we could get to and advancing our species. And then I wrote, the city will do what the city will do. Earthquakes, unrest, viruses, drugs, things you can't expect will happen. And it's a reminder that we all are small, but collectively we are great. And it has been the honor of my life to lead this city with you, alongside you, sometimes behind you, and sometimes in front of you. And for that, I will be eternally grateful to the United Chambers of Commerce and to each and every one of you. And like I said, I can't wait to come back here. And probably next year, I'll actually get to eat my lunch. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.